Good trouble. And Jesus got into some good trouble today, I would say, at the temple. Good trouble is what it really means is when you see something that's wrong, you speak up and you try to do something about it. Now, the term good trouble in our society has been made much more popular by the late John Lewis, who was a congressman from the state of Georgia. John was one of the original 6 or so key leaders of the civil rights movement. And he was a man who was totally into peaceful protesting, but sharing God's love through his life and trying to free people who have been oppressed. And John was a very humble man. He was someone who was loved on both sides of the aisle, as we like to say. Liberal and conservative alike had a deep appreciation for this humble man from Georgia. And of course, he died this past year, but he would always say it's useful and good to get into some good trouble, some necessary trouble, to speak out when you see something wrong and to try to do something about it. And that was John, and that certainly was Jesus as well. I remember, and I've said this to you before, and I'll probably say it a half a dozen times a year because what I'm about to say, I say to myself 2 or 3 times every single day. I had a professor in seminary who said, you know, a life of ministry requires that occasionally you put yourself in harm's way, and you are rather intentional about that. And he said, and when you do it, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be frightened. You're probably going to have some sleepless nights. You're going to wonder, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? But he said, you know what, my friends? If you never have those feelings in ministry, I question if you're even doing ministry at all. Well, anyway, Jesus would certainly relate to those words, and he would have inspired those words. As he comes into Jerusalem, this would be what we call Palm Sunday. He walks into the city. He immediately goes to the temple. And this temple, and the thing about the temple, the temple was a slaughterhouse. It was the center of the economic structure of Jerusalem, which was fully based on sacrificing animals. And there were days when as many as 1 million animals would be sacrificed at that temple. Lots of stories told about priests that were knee-deep in blood. And then you got the smoke and you got the blood, and it's quite a situation. Not something that we would probably find very attractive, but in any event, Jesus is not today necessarily protesting against animal sacrifice. He's not necessarily doing that, but he is protesting about the fundamental corruption that is taking place in the temple, the fact that the temple has now just simply become a marketplace. It's just an economic center. There's no sense of faithful purpose. He's speaking out through these actions against Rome to some extent, and certainly the relationship of the temple with Rome. It's all interconnected, and he is making this strong statement. Now, last week, we remember Jesus and Peter get into it a little bit. And Jesus says, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. and I'm going to be prosecuted by the leadership, and I'm going to die. And of course, Peter didn't like that. Well, today, Jesus takes those initial steps and he disturbs the peace by shaking things up in the temple. And then he comes back the next day to preach, and then the next day, and the next day. And finally, on the next day, he has the Last Supper with the disciples. But Jesus comes into town, he stirs things up, and he understands that in Roman occupied territory, if you disturb the peace, you will be crucified. If you murder someone, you will be crucified. If you steal from others, you will be crucified. Those were the three essential ways of getting oneself crucified. So Jesus understood. He was breaking law. He was disturbing the peace. And to the Romans, this might have been the biggest law of all, because they wanted this peace, this Pax Romana. They needed the region to be peaceful so that they could establish their commerce accordingly. So Jesus broke the law. And I just want to say, I invite you to think about this a little bit as we move forward and the good trouble Jesus gets in. It's a little disturbing when folks say he was innocent and he died. It's unwitting, but there's the lack of appreciation for what Jesus was doing and what he knew he was doing, and the fear that he felt and the discomfort he felt. His humanness was on the line. He knew what he was doing. Now, you could say it was prophesied, and that's fine and good. But the fully God, fully man of Jesus knew very well what he was doing, and he knew very well what would happen. And so to weaken that or to homogenize that is to, in a very serious way, disturb the integrity of the cross. And I just invite us to think a little bit about that. Well, anyway, thinking more about good trouble. I shared with you a little bit a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, about another area that needs a lot of attention, and that is the area of nursing homes. 8 years ago, when I started my pastoral ministry, I started to visit nursing homes. And, you know, I visited people from the congregation and this and that, and I did that, and didn't think much about it other than I did it, you know. And I liked it. I like to visit people. I look forward to visiting with people again when we get past COVID. But anyway, I did that. And there was a woman named Bertha who was a member of Transfiguration, and we were visiting her. And there was a gal 4 feet away in another bed who they had 3 beds to the room. There should have only been 1 or 2. They're packing them in like sardines. And the smell, and just, it's not pleasant. No place to sit, okay, etc. But anyway, so this gal next to Bertha, her name was Marianne. I didn't know her at the time, but after I went a few times, I realized she kept looking over. And so I said to her, I said, do you want, would you like me to pray with you? And would you like communion too? And she said, yes, that would be, oh, that'd be wonderful. Well, it turns out that Marianne had no one. No one visited her. And this was confirmed by others. And she used to play the piano in a Southern Baptist church back in the day. But But anyway, she was abandoned in essence. And so anyway, our congregation adopted her, so to speak. She became a member and was beloved. But the thing that Marianne started to teach me, she said, Pastor, you've got to understand at least half of the people in here have no one. And I thought about that, and one thing led to another. And I confirmed that fact, and I started to talk to other people associated with other nursing homes. And it seems to be the case that in many, if not most nursing homes, at least half of the people have no one. No one. And they're going to die there. They're going to spend the last weeks, months, or even years of their lives with no one to tell their story to, with no one to listen to them or to talk to in this particular way. And it grinded me, something awful. Not only the fact that there could be so many people without that type of love in their life, but that the nursing homes, as I started to see them more clearly, they were understaffed. It's very oppressive situation. Some sort of an injustice that just should not be accepted. And so I said to the congregation, I preached several weeks on this issue. I said, you know, I cannot stand up here as a pastor knowing what I know and seeing what I see if we don't try to do something about this. And I said, the thing that amazed me, my friends, honest to God, I'm shocked. I am shocked that the church, the larger church, throughout the United States has allowed this to happen. Sure, it's fine to visit our own. Oh, and it's nice to do an occasional worship service or a project. That's all fine and good. But I'm talking about getting to know people on a one-on-one basis who have no one. Frontline ministry. And very little of it's being done. So we started a ministry and we made this happen and then trained many other churches to do it before COVID shut everything down. But my friends, it's something in our own backyards. It's something that we have all sort of seen. It's something we should not tolerate. It's something we should stand up and speak about. Because if we cannot, as a church, provide that kind of love and support to those who are in their last years or weeks or months, there's something wrong with that. And so doing what we're talking about today, doing good trouble, is a part of the world of faith. It's not easy, but I will tell you something. And you've all experienced good trouble a little bit here or there, but when you do it, you will receive riches beyond your wildest dreams. You know, closing this up, Friday I did a funeral for a gal named Evelyn Kivy. She was 101 years old. And in this funeral, there were 40 people, masked, etc. And if it hadn't been COVID, there would have been at least another 50 or 60 people. And she's 101. And I was taken aback by the level of mourning that was taking place for someone so old. She was so beloved. She enriched people's lives. She was blessed with family. And I thought, that's phenomenal. But then I flipped back to those who are dying with no one. And my hope and my prayer, dear friends, is this: that the church mobilizes more and more when we get out of this COVID and gets to know the strangers and allows their lives to have new meaning, just like Evie's life had for her family and friends. Peace be with you, and amen.